Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KGUT9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jason. Good to be back.
Yeah, let's start with our Huddle poll question as Arizona football takes on Houston this Friday night at home. And our Huddle poll question is, how many fans do you think are actually going to be in Arizona Stadium on Friday night? Now, let's be clear. This is not paid attendance or announced attendance, which will both be more than 35,000. This is fannies in the seats. So you can vote more than 35,000, between 25 and 35,000, or fewer than 25,000. Okay. Obviously, this is a team on a 5-game losing streak, and the basketball team plays simultaneously at Wisconsin. So if you go on kgun9.com and vote, you can see where the results are, and we're going to share those a little bit later. But Pat, I'm thinking you're going with number 2. That's my guess for you.
You're right. I did go with number 2. They'll be just more than 25,000. That's my guess. Is that those of us that have season tickets feel like we should support them and go at least for a little bit of the game. I'll be watching the Arizona game on my phone, though.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Yeah,
I'm going to have to be watching the basketball game. I think we're scheduled to be live outside of Arizona Stadium Friday for the 5 and 6 o'clock show. So I'm going to be there anyway. Probably start watching the game at 7 and then mosey into the seats at 8:15 and watch a half at least, depending on how things are going.
Yeah, and also we got a high school football Friday night for the playoffs. A little bit of a niche, but it might take a few fans away. Just for context, by the way, Arizona Stadium seats 50,000 people. So,
right. But here's the thing, Jason. It's already a lot of strikes against you. 8:15 games on a Friday night are not necessarily, a big draw anyway. Then you add in, as you said, you've got some parents and high school players and high school students that are going to watch their playoff game. And then you've got Arizona basketball, who clearly number 9 in the country and just rolling over everybody. There's a lot of anticipation about playing a real team in Wisconsin. There's a lot of things going against Arizona football right now, attendance wise.
Yeah, and nothing bigger than a team that's on a 5-game losing streak and coming off a bye, coming off a really bad loss at Central Florida. The team season is likely over in about 16 or 17 days, 17 or 18 days. And you got to wonder, Pat, I know they're thinking bowl for U of A, and then that's still a possibility at 3 and 6. But when you've lost 5 in a row and the defense is worn out and they look the way they do, I don't think any players are giving up or mailed it in. No. But I don't think anybody is realistically thinking this team's going to a bowl game and magically all of a sudden going to win 3 straight games with the teams they have ahead of them.
Now, I will say this, Jason, the last time they came off a bye, they absolutely destroyed Utah. At that time, Utah was ranked number 10. I know Utah's had their struggles, although they just they just kind of righted the ship a little bit. But I think you give them that extra week, and maybe they're laying here waiting for Houston to come in. Houston playing much better than they have, but it's still a Houston team that's not all that great. And maybe all that combined, they get one more win in the season, and that'll be on Friday night.
Yeah, and then it's a tough situation, Pat. I mean, we'll get to it more later on, but your top players are likely going to the NFL draft. Your other top players are likely going to the portal. It doesn't bode well for next year. And I think the team is going to have to come and get an offensive coordinator. If you look at where Brennan got a bad break, maybe it was in expectations, maybe it was in injuries, but where you wonder if he could have done differently. Dino Babers is a very experienced coach, but apparently he hadn't called plays in over a decade. And you got somebody else now who's kind of a rookie play caller at this level. And I think that if Brent Brennan is allowed to stay for another year, which is my expectation, he is going to be forced to make some changes in the coaching staff. And I would think at the top of the list would be an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I just think, you talk about the way things kind of shake out with athletic departments. And the one thing you don't want to have happen is you don't want an athletic director to hire either a head football coach or a head men's basketball coach, and then that athletic director gets fired, and now a new athletic director comes in, and only a few months after this football coach, in the case of Brent Brennan, is hired, And I'm not saying that Desiree Reed Francois isn't excited about Brent Brennan. They both come from that same era. We've talked a lot about the Dick Tomey era, all that, and I think she was excited. But at the same time, would that have been the head coach she hired? With her roots with Missouri and UNLV, would that have been the coach she hired? And you just wonder. And you and I both believe that they're not going to make a head coaching change after this one season. Financially, they can't afford it. I think it's only fair as well, and I know that doesn't always play in athletics, but I think it's only fair to let Brent Brennan have another year. But a year from now, let's say, and things aren't going well at the end of next season, is Desiree Reed Francois in a position where she gets to pick the head coach? Or perhaps Brent Brennan turns this around. He gets the number 4 recruiting class in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm going to push back on that recruiting class. I'm hearing other people say it.
Albeit not star players, but this is the Big 12, Jason. It's not the SEC. It's not the Big 10.
Kansas State's doing okay. Colorado's doing okay.
Yeah, and you can and Iowa State.
How's BYU doing?
BYU's doing terrific, and I'm not seeing a lot of 5-star players on that roster, but they've got a program. They built a program. You mentioned these schools, and most of them have pretty good programs set up. Colorado's a different animal. That's just with Prime, but let's just see. But my original point is, it's not the ideal situation when you get a brand new athletic director with all those financial issues that the University of Arizona has, especially in the athletic department. And then you kind of get, in there and go, well, that wouldn't be the coach I picked, but we'll ride him for now. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where the reason why Brent Brennan's going to be back next year is the reason why he's here in the first place, and that's kind of all they can afford to do. And so I think that you'll see him back next year. Anyway, we'll cross that. I think just going to end on this here because we want to get to Arizona basketball. Much more positive situation here. But it's not just whether they beat Houston; it's whether the team's competitive, because they were not competitive against Central Florida. And until T-Mac and Fafita started playing backyard football at the end of the West Virginia game, they weren't competitive in that either.
Well, and that's the biggest disappointment, I think, is it's watching an Arizona team that we know has enough talent. Even with the injuries, you'd think you'd be able to play with a struggling West Virginia or a struggling, especially UCF, who was, they were down and out. And they made a change at coordinator themselves, but it was frustrating. It's beyond frustrating. I think it was, you've got to see more. You got to see more fight, Jason. You just got to see more fight. That's what you want to see.
When Isaiah Johnson ripped the helmet and threw it 15 yards. Hey, we don't condone dirty plays here, but at least the guy was tired of being pushed around.
Right.
It reminded me of when Adia Barnes once said at a news conference a few years ago, somebody scores on me 5 times in a row. The next time they're hitting the floor.
Right. Exactly right. Let's get some pushback. Let's and maybe that's, remember when they went up to Utah, and I know it was a long time ago, September 28th. They went up to Utah, though. Remember how tough they were and how physical they were against Utah, and they knew they had to be against Utah, and they dominated that game. They've got to come out and knock knock Houston in the chops and let them know they're in for a fight, instead of the space game that just Central Florida blasted.
They were launched out of Orlando.
Took them 9 games just watching the lift off.
Took them 9 games to find a second receiver in Chris Hunter. Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch to Arizona basketball, because we do want to get to that. As head coach Tommy Lloyd said, Pat, it's about to get real. Certainly they go from playing Canisius and Old Dominion to now going to Wisconsin, a team they did handle last year at McHale Center. Obviously, it's a little bit different situation on the road, and we're going to know a little bit more about this team. But we always talk about the eye test, and boy, are they passing the eye test. And this is a deeper team than Tommy Lloyd has had. He doesn't normally like to play more than 8 guys, but he's playing 10 because of how deep this team is. And it'll be interesting to see if he still goes with 10. But every player is just a little bit different in his own way, and kind of brings something different, especially in the front court. How different Vasar is to Krivas to Townsend, to who's more of a little bit different than Awaka, who can move. So a lot of very different pieces for Arizona basketball that we've seen in the last couple of games to start the season.
Yeah, you mentioned that with the front court, and then the back court is just loaded, led by Caleb Love, and you see Jaden Bradley there too. Awaka has been extremely impressive, and that's the kind of body, Jason. I've been telling everybody, when you have that kind of a body and that athletic ability with that size of body, that's perfect. When you go up against Houston in basketball, Iowa State in basketball, Kansas in basketball, you got to be tough and you got to be physical because you know they are. We've seen Houston, Iowa State's just as physical, if not more defensively. Kansas, obviously, one of the top teams in the country every year. You need a Tobe Awaka. You have to have a guy like that, and they have it now. And then you mentioned it when you've got two different kinds of 7-footers in Vasar and Krivas. You've got the ability to kind of match them up depending on the opponent, and I think that'll play a big part in it. Or perhaps even playing both at the same time. We saw that a little bit in these first two games as well. I'm very excited. I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll know a lot more after this Friday and then the following Friday when Duke comes to town as well.
Yeah, Wisconsin, Duke, and UCLA, 3 of the next 5 games. The Duke game is home. Can just imagine. Now that's at 8:30. I don't think fans are going to mind that 8:30. Obviously, it's indoors, right? No. Imagine the buzz that's going to be in McHale Center for that one. We've talked about this before. When UCLA comes to McHale, there's a little extra buzz kind of in the arena. I think there's going to be a giant buzz in that arena for Duke coming what's Flagg's first name? Is it Cooper Flagg?
Yeah, Cooper Flagg.
Cooper Flagg, the star freshman for Duke.
Yeah,
with the big NIL deal.
He's a man. He's going to be tough, and I think they play Kentucky tonight. That'll be a good matchup too. We're going to see how good Cooper Flagg is this early in the season, and maybe get a scouting report and to know what we're going to have to look out for.
Is Kentucky though? I haven't checked.
I think they're 12th or 13th. They're decent. They're decent.
Yeah, that's one of the fun storylines this year is Coach Cal at Arkansas and the roster that he has, and he's got his top freshmen, his top guys he brought from Kentucky, and a couple of transfers. So
I will say this too, as I was sitting there watching the game, I did go to both games as a fan, both the first 2 games as a fan, and that Old Dominion game. Watching Carter Bryant, I don't know if you noticed this too. The second half, Carter Bryant seemed to kind of come into his own a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know it's Old Dominion. I know they're blowing them out and all that. But those
the steals,
they played better defense. And I think maybe the message has gotten to him that, you see these guys getting a lot of minutes, even in these games that are blowouts. It's because they're playing good defense. And Tommy Louis talked about that afterwards too, is defense has got to be the mantra for this team. Is it has been the last couple of years, and it's why, except for when they lose
right on cue, a Mo Krivas block.
yeah, there you go. But it really does. This team likes to run. This team likes to score fast. But how do you do that? By getting the ball back. And when they can do that, they'll be one of the top handful of teams in the country, which I believe they can be. But I think Carter Bryant, you and I kind of were going back and forth about what this team might look like now versus what it might look like, say, when we get to the end of the regular season and head towards March. And Carter Bryant, I think, is going to play a much larger role than he is right now. And I think that you're seeing a little of that and maybe making it tough on Tommy Lloyd as to how much he does get to play.
Interesting. You can just see they kind of physically manhandled ODU.
Yeah, they did.
I saw Canisius in the pregame out on the bus. We're getting they were just outside the bus and they were kind of sitting down outside McHale Center, and they kind of looked like they were already defeated.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame them.
McHale's an intimidating place for opposing teams.
And, it is. And you know what both those teams did was they just tried to hack. They just tried to be physical, and Arizona's too tough now. Right on cue. There's Tobe Awaka scoring on being fouled. You can't just keep fouling this team because they'll make free throws. They make the majority of their free throws, and it just extends leads. And got to hit free throws. And the culprit of the worst free throw shooting of all is no longer on the team. And I think that's addition by subtraction.
I don't miss that. Great personality. We love Big O, as they call him.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't miss that foul shooting.
No,
that was a little bit of liability. All right, let's end here on our Huddle poll question. Let's take a look at some of the results. How many fans do you think are actually going to be in Arizona Stadium Friday night against Houston? We're not talking paid attendance. We're not talking about the announced attendance. We want to know fannies in the seat at 8:15. Okay, a few late arriving fans, 8:30. How many fans are actually going to be in attendance? Well, we actually we got some votes in here for sure. For it to only say 2%. 70% saying fewer than 25,000. Wow. You know, our superior at work was actually saying that, Tread. He thought that it was going to be fewer than 25,000. I was like, no, it's not going to be that low. Well, maybe he's right. We'll see.
Maybe
I'm
so.
thinking between 25 and 35. For it to be under 25,000, Pat, that means less than half of Arizona Stadium would be filled.
Yeah,
That
that's
would be
right.
embarrassing. That would really be embarrassing.
Would.
I don't care how bad the team is, or you know, there's only 6 home games a year. That'd be really embarrassing if we got fewer than 25,000 fans.
Yeah, I agree. But well, I'll be there. I'll count them. I'll try to count them. 1, 2, 3. If that's the case, we're in big trouble. If I can actually count them, we're in big trouble.
That's for sure. All right, this has been the Huddle. We're gonna sign off here at 20 after the hour. We'll do a few more minutes next time to make up for it. But
Talk more Arizona basketball. Yeah,
Pat and I both have to run to stories right now, so that's the reason for it. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching and listening here on the Huddle, KGUN 9's weekly streaming sports talk show. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. We'll see you next time.